Jake Morrison knew he was about to be humiliated, and approximately 2,000 spectators had gathered to watch it happen. The Valkorian embassy's cultural exchange program had seemed like a good idea when his MMA gym was first approached. Demonstrate human combat techniques, promote mutual understanding between species, build bridges through shared appreciation of martial discipline. Educational, diplomatic, low stakes. Then Jake learned his demonstration partner would be Commander Caelrix, Valkorian military combat champion, undefeated in 362 matches, possessing physical attributes that made human heavyweight champions look like children playing at fighting. The Valkorians were impressive by any standard. 8 feet tall on average, dense muscle structure that gave them approximately 3 times human strength pound for pound, reflexes honed by evolution on a high-gravity world. Commander Caelrix represented the peak of her species' combat capability. Jake was 5'10", 175 pounds, and his most notable achievement was running a successful MMA gym in Seattle for 15 years. He'd fought competitively in his 20s, decent regional record, nothing spectacular. Now he taught others and tried not to get injured sparring with students half his age. This was going to be a disaster. The exhibition ring had been set up in the Valkorian embassy's main hall. 2,000 beings, mixed human and Valkorian, filled the observation seats. Jake stood in his corner, wearing standard sparring gear, trying not to think about the fact that his opponent could probably bench press a small car. Commander Caelrix entered the ring, and the Valkorian section of the crowd erupted in approval. She stood nearly 3 feet taller than Jake, her long, elegant ears tilted forward in what his hasty cultural briefing had indicated meant confidence or anticipation. She wore minimal padding. Valkorian physiology made them remarkably resistant to impact damage that would hospitalize humans. She looked at Jake, and her expression held something between amusement and disdain. "You thought you could beat me, human?" she said loudly, addressing Jake but clearly playing to the crowd. "Your species is physically inferior in every measurable way. Weaker, slower, less durable, less evolved for combat." She gestured dismissively. "This demonstration will last approximately 30 seconds before I must stop to avoid seriously injuring you." The crowd murmured, anticipation from the Valkorians, nervous tension from the humans who'd come to support their local gym owner. Jake took his position and tried not to think about how this was going to look on social media when videos inevitably went viral. Local MMA instructor gets destroyed by alien in 30 seconds. The referee, a neutral third-species mediator, explained the rules. Light contact sparring, no strikes to certain vulnerable areas, match continues until one participant yields or referee calls stop for safety. Standard stuff. Caelrix barely listened. She was too busy looking at Jake like he was a mild inconvenience before her real training session. The referee signaled start. Caelrix didn't immediately attack. She was too confident for rushing. She circled Jake slowly, her movements precise and controlled, clearly expecting him to make the first desperate move that she could counter with overwhelming force. Jake circled opposite, maintaining careful distance, watching her footwork and weight distribution. She moved like most elite athletes who never actually faced a challenge. Excellent fundamental technique, perfect conditioning, but zero adaptation because she'd never needed it. Absolute confidence in superior attributes. No consideration that strategy might matter when you could simply overpower any opposition. When Caelrix finally committed to an attack, it was impressively fast. A straight punch that would absolutely devastate Jake if it connected. The power behind it was obvious even in the air displacement. But Jake had been teaching fighters for 15 years. He'd trained people who went on to professional careers, worked with athletes who were younger, faster, and stronger than him in every way. He'd learned to survive in the ring not through matching physical attributes, but through reading opponents, understanding timing, and making other people miss. He read the commitment in Caelrix's shoulders, saw the punch coming, and slipped it by approximately 3 inches while simultaneously stepping off the line of attack. Caelrix's fist passed through empty space where Jake's head had been a moment ago, and her forward momentum carried her slightly past balanced position. Jake didn't counterstrike. That would be stupid against someone this physically superior. Instead, he lightly touched her extended arm, just enough contact to satisfy the sparring requirement, and immediately reset to safe distance. Caelrix recovered quickly, but her long ears performed a complex movement Jake's briefing had indicated meant surprise or reassessment. She attacked again, this time with a combination: jab, cross, hook, all technically perfect, all devastatingly powerful. All missing by calculated margins as Jake slipped the jab, weaved under the cross, and pivoted away from the hook. He touched her arm again after the hook passed, acknowledgement of successful defense, not attempt to damage. 30 seconds passed. Jake was still standing, unmarked, and Caelrix's prediction was already wrong. She increased the pace, throwing faster combinations, trying to use her superior hand speed to overwhelm Jake's defense. But speed without timing is just movement. Power without precision is just wasted energy. Jake had been hit by plenty of people stronger than him over his career. He knew that getting hit by someone with this much physical advantage was survival failure, so he simply didn't get hit. Every strike passed through space Jake had occupied moments before. Every combination ended with Caelrix slightly off balance, reset to distance, unable to leverage her physical advantages because she couldn't actually make contact. The crowd's murmurs changed tone. Confusion from the Valkorians, who'd expected immediate human defeat. Growing excitement from the humans, who recognized what they were watching. 90 seconds into the match that Caelrix had predicted would last 30 seconds, and she still hadn't landed a single clean strike. Jake could see her frustration building. Her combinations were getting faster, but less controlled. She was relying more on physical attributes and less on technique. The textbook fundamentals she displayed initially were degrading into wild attempts to simply land something, anything, through sheer speed and power. Jake touched her shoulder after one particularly overcommitted combination. Not striking, just acknowledgement that she'd left herself vulnerable, letting her feel the tactical gap her frustration had created. 3 minutes in, Caelrix paused, breathing harder than someone with her conditioning should be after 3 minutes of light sparring. Her long ears were pinned back now. The briefing had said that meant confusion or reconsidering assumptions. "You cannot win by running, human," she said loudly enough for the crowd to hear. "Eventually, I will land a strike, and this demonstration will end." "I'm not running," Jake replied calmly. "I'm demonstrating that superior strength doesn't guarantee victory if the stronger fighter can't actually hit their opponent." He gestured to the space between them. "That's the lesson here. Not that humans can outmuscle Valkorians, obviously we can't. But that pure physical attributes aren't the only factors that determine outcomes. Strategy matters, timing matters, understanding your opponent's patterns matters." Caelrix's expression shifted, pride mixing with dawning realization that this wasn't going the way she'd expected. She committed fully now, no more testing, no more measured combinations. She was trying to prove her point through one decisive strike that would end this demonstration and re-establish the natural order where physically superior species defeats physically inferior one. But her frustration made her readable. Every attack telegraphed. Every combination followed logical but predictable patterns. She'd probably never needed to develop deceptive techniques because overwhelming physical advantages had always been enough. When Caelrix threw a particularly committed overhand right, all her considerable strength behind it, absolutely devastating if it connected, Jake didn't just slip it. He timed her commitment, stepped inside the strike's arc where her reach advantage became a liability, and executed a textbook judo sweep that used her forward momentum against her. Caelrix hit the mat hard. Not injured, Valkorian durability meant the impact that would hospitalize a human just surprised her. But decisively taken down. Put on the ground by someone she outweighed by 80 pounds and outmuscled by margins that made the physical mismatch absurd. The crowd went absolutely silent. Jake immediately stepped back, offering his hand to help her up. Respect, not dominance. The demonstration wasn't about humiliating her. It was about teaching. "You fell into pattern," Jake said quietly. "When strength didn't work immediately, you tried more strength instead of adapting strategy. That's the mistake. The lesson isn't that I'm stronger than you, obviously I'm not. It's that strength without strategy leaves vulnerabilities that someone who understands timing and leverage can exploit. You were so confident in your physical advantages that you never developed the tactical depth to fight someone who makes those advantages irrelevant. Kaelrix stared at him from the mat, her long ears performing movements Jake didn't have any reference for. Shock, confusion, dawning respect mixed with something that looked like humiliation. Then she took his offered hand, let him help her up despite the absurdity of someone his size assisting someone hers. You defeated me, she said, and her voice held something between shock and growing respect. Not through strength or speed or physical superiority. Through strategy, timing, pattern recognition. 15 years of learning how to fight people bigger and stronger than me, because that's literally every opponent when you make your living teaching mixed martial arts. Jake gestured to the silent crowd. That's what this demonstration was supposed to show. Not human superiority, we're obviously not physically superior. But that attributes aren't everything. That skill and strategy and understanding your opponent matter. That underestimating someone based purely on physical measurements is a fundamental mistake that costs victories. Something profound shifted in Kaelrix's expression. The arrogance that had characterized her entrance was completely gone, replaced by genuine curiosity and what looked like wounded pride wrestling with intellectual honesty. "Teach me," she said abruptly. "I want to understand how you did that. I have won 362 matches through superior strength and conditioning. I am undefeated champion because I am physically superior to every opponent I have faced." She paused, and the next words seemed to cost her something. "But you just showed me that I have been winning against opponents who couldn't exploit the gaps in my technique. Against someone who understands strategy and timing, who makes physical advantages irrelevant." She trailed off, realization clearly uncomfortable. "Against someone like that," Jake finished, "all those victories just mean you've never learned to adapt. You've been winning through attributes instead of skill development, which works great until you face someone who neutralizes your advantages." Kaelrix's ears performed that pinned-back movement again. "Yes, exactly that, I have been." She searched for words. Lazy, complacent. "I assumed physical superiority was sufficient. I never developed strategic depth because I never needed it. Every opponent I defeated validated that assumption." She met Jake's eyes directly. "Until you made my strength irrelevant, made my speed meaningless, made 362 victories feel like they were won against people who never really challenged me." Her voice held something like gratitude mixed with embarrassment. "Teach me how to fight when physical superiority isn't enough. Show me what I've been missing." The demonstration transformed into impromptu teaching session right there in the ring. Jake walked Kaelrix through the principles. How her shoulders telegraphed every punch before it launched. How commitment without backup options created vulnerability. How frustration made her predictable. How she could develop feints and deceptive timing to make her physical advantages even more effective. She listened with intensity that suggested she was reconsidering her entire approach to combat. The crowd watched in fascination as the demonstration became genuine cross-species exchange of martial knowledge. When they finally concluded, Kaelrix bowed formally, a Valkorian gesture of respect Jake recognized from his cultural briefing. "Thank you, Instructor Morrison, for the lesson, and for not simply letting me win to preserve diplomatic relations. The humility you forced me to learn is more valuable than polite sparring would have been." Weeks later, Kaelrix returned to Jake's gym, not for another exhibition. As a student. "I told my military commanders about the human who defeated me without landing a single strike," she explained, her long ears forward in what Jake had learned meant earnest attention. "They did not believe me, said I must not have taken the match seriously, that no human could defeat a Valkorian combat champion through skill alone." Her ears shifted to that determined position. "So I challenged 3 more opponents, Valkorians, all physically comparable to me. I tried to use what you taught me in that brief session: strategy over strength, timing over power, adaptation over repetition. I won all 3 matches. But more importantly, I learned how much I had been relying on physical advantages while completely neglecting tactical development." She met Jake's eyes. "I have been winning fights my entire career without truly learning to fight. You showed me that by making my victories feel hollow, by demonstrating that I had never faced a real challenge, never been forced to develop beyond my natural attributes. That is greater gift than polite exhibition sparring. Will you teach me properly? Show me how to fight like you do, not for strength but for understanding. Jake smiled. That's literally my job, welcome to class. Over the following months, Calyrex became Jake's most dedicated student. She approached training with the same intensity she'd brought to her military career, but now focused on developing the strategic and technical depth she'd neglected for years. She learned to read opponents, to disguise her intentions, to fight with her brain as much as her body. Other Velcorians began attending Jake's gym, curious about the training that had transformed their combat champion. Jake's small Seattle MMA school became an unlikely hub for cross-species martial arts exchange. Years later, Commander Calyrex became famous in Velcorian military circles for a combat style that emphasized strategy and adaptation over pure physical dominance. When asked about the transformation, she told the same story. I stood in exhibition ring, confident in my superiority. I mocked a human instructor for thinking he could match me. Then he proceeded to make my strength completely irrelevant through superior strategy, timing, and understanding of leverage. He defeated me without throwing a single strike. Made 362 victories feel like they'd been won against opponents who never challenged me to actually develop skill. She paused, her long ears performing that complex movement that now Jake knew meant profound emotion. That humility, being forced to recognize that I had been winning through attributes rather than ability, taught me more than any victory ever did. I learned that underestimating opponents based on physical measurements is a fundamental strategic mistake. That true skill means adapting to every opponent rather than assuming superiority is sufficient. And at his gym on Earth, Jake continued teaching the same principles he demonstrated in that exhibition. That physical attributes matter but aren't determinative. That strategy and timing can overcome superior strength. That underestimating opponents based on size or species is a mistake that costs matches. He had a regular training partner now, an 8-foot-tall Velcorian commander who traveled from her embassy assignment, specifically for sessions that looked absurd to casual observers. Someone impossibly strong working with someone half her size on techniques that emphasized skill over power. You thought you could beat me, human? Calyrex had mocked at the start of that exhibition. Reality had proved her spectacularly wrong. And in learning that lesson, in having her arrogance systematically dismantled by someone she dismissed as physically inferior, she'd become a fighter who valued strategy as much as strength, who respected discipline over dominance, and who understood that true skill meant never assuming your advantages were enough. The exhibition had been meant to last 30 seconds and demonstrate Velcorian superiority. Instead, it lasted 5 minutes and taught something far more valuable. That respect must be earned through skill,